This video is sponsored by Muse, a unique spatial canvas that's your tool for thought. Hey, it's Chris, and welcome to my 2021 iPad Pro review, part 1. I'm gonna review the iPad Pro as it is before WWDC, and then I'm gonna make a follow-up video after WWDC with all the new software features. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out. So today we're gonna be checking out some apps that are adapting to the M1 arriving on the iPad. We're gonna be doing lots of screen tests and comparisons. Then we're gonna talk about Thunderbolt. I've been trying out some storage accessories, wanna report on that for you guys. The early reviews missed the fact that the iPad Pro has a much closer focal distance than even the iPhone. So it kinda acts like a macro lens. You can see how close and nice it got on this flower. Those early reviews also missed the discussion surrounding the fact that despite being able to upgrade to 16 gigs of RAM, individual iPad apps can only use around 5 gigs of RAM per app. We're gonna talk about that. But all those early reviews basically concluded the same thing, which if you summarize it would be amazing hardware, but still limiting software. And while there may be a lot of truth to that statement, I mean, this is basically the same iPad Pro experience that we've always had, just better. And while there are some serious improvements, there's not a fundamental paradigm shift in terms of the kind of work and the kind of apps that you can use and get done on the iPad Pro. I do want to try to push past that narrative a little bit and talk about what you can do with all that RAM, with all the storage, with the new processor, and with this amazing screen on the 12.9 inch. Now, beyond just the boring, average, everyday type of work, I have been trying to test out some of the apps that at least try to give the iPad, the world's greatest tablet, a reason to exist. Now, unfortunately, since it's not quite out yet, I haven't been able to test out Procreate 5.2, which, if you're unaware, runs 4 times faster on the M1 chip. And then it also adds this really awesome 3D painting feature, which I did see a demo of and I was blown away. I can't wait to try it out because then you can preview that 3D object in AR in your real space there. But I did, however, manage to get my hands on the beta version of LumaFusion, which features the multicam editing support. And wow, is that cool. You're looking at it right here and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 angles, but that's not all. I can flip that down for another 6. That's a total of 12 streams that this thing can handle. And honestly, it's just as simple as tapping to switch your view. And wow, it's nice and fluid. I can't believe this hasn't existed until now. For anybody doing anything creative, CAD work, graphic design, this is really a good sign because it's showing that we can push this device beyond what was possible to do previously, number one, but maybe beyond what you even suspected that an iPad could do. One of the other apps I've been playing around with is Halide Mark II. Now, you might recognize the name because it's one of the best iPhone photo apps out there. But as you can see, they've redesigned the app from the ground up to work with the iPad. But if you can conquer your fears of being judged by other people, you can actually take some really great photos like you're seeing right here. This was taken on the iPad. You got some nice blurriness in the background, lots of crispy detail. Now, anybody who's been around the iPad ecosystem for a while is familiar with the Affinity suite of apps. Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer, and if you're on a Mac, Affinity Publisher. Now, Affinity Publisher is only available for the Mac at the moment, but they sent me over some files to test and open on the iPad Pro in Affinity Photo. And guess what? With the M1 chip, which is literally a desktop class chip, I was able to open this publisher file. So here at least is an aspect where you can understand that this M1 iPad Pro is capable of handling files created on the Mac. Now, as long as I'm telling you about some apps that are great for your iPad Pro, let me tell you about today's sponsor, Muse. Muse is such a great fit for this video. Definitely an app that makes the iPad worth owning. Muse is a spatial canvas for your research notes, your reading, your sketching, your screenshots, your bookmarks. If you're doing some deep thinking at your iPad, and if you don't want to be constrained to linear documents of mostly text, and if you want to move stuff around and bring new ideas in and easily cull irrelevant material, and maybe even get a little messy in the process, then Muse is definitely the app for you. Now, before Muse was even a sponsor, I had already featured them in another video because I just love the features. Like being able to add anything to a Muse board, from photos to tweets to files and more. And I also really love how sketching isn't restricted to a dedicated space. So I can write right on top of things without any restrictions or boundaries. I think you owe it to yourself to consider trying Muse out. Now, let's talk about this new Liquid Retina XDR display, aka Apple's new mini LED display, which is gonna bring HDR content to life in a whole new way. But I will say it's not perfect, and we're gonna talk about that. Basically, when you see Apple's marketing talking about XDR, just substitute that for HDR because it's extreme dynamic range. Now, the 11-inch iPad Pro does not have the Pro Display XDR technology this year. It's only the larger 12.9-inch. And this display will give you brighter brights and darker darks than other iPad displays. And as part of that, you're also gonna end up with punchier contrast and colors and detail. In my experience, it's been the best mobile movie experience, period. Now I've got some tests to show you, some side-by-side iPad screen comparisons, and I just wanna let you know my cameras are not gonna capture this as it really looks in real life. So when it's really bright, you might see something look a little washed out on camera, but this is really the kind of thing you just have to see it in person. So let's start out with an 11-inch 2021 iPad Pro versus the 12.9-inch. So the 11-inch doesn't have the Pro Display XDR technology, the 12.9 does. And you should be able to notice right away that that 12.9-inch is brighter. And I know you can't fully appreciate it just watching this, but take my word for it, wow. It looks really good. Now what you're seeing is some HDR content that I shot on my iPhone 12 Pro Max in Dolby Vision. And wow, if you've never experienced Dolby Vision shot on one of the new Pro iPhones, it's really something to behold. I wish that it could get uploaded to YouTube because it's amazing. Let me next show you the old 12.9-inch iPad Pro versus the new generation of 12.9-inch iPad Pro. And of course, these are set to the same brightness level. And as you can see, there's a noticeable difference when viewing that HDR content. Now, outside of HDR content, just certain videos, certain photos, you're not gonna notice a lot of difference. If you're just looking at the home screen, for instance, or maybe you're typing in IA Writer or Apple Notes. While the 12.9-inch does get hundreds of nits brighter than the 11-inch and the older iPad Pros, it's not in every situation. Now look, everyone on social media has been freaking out about the iPad Pro blooming on this mini LED display. People really like to exaggerate, okay? Because while there is some blooming, and I'm gonna show you in just a second, it's way worse in photos and videos of it than it is in actual real life. Now, in this comparison, you're gonna notice some blooming on the 12.9-inch on the right, around that text there, and on the old 12.9-inch on the left, you don't really see it. Because on the right there, I want you to notice just how black the black is versus just how washed out the blacks are on the old model. On the left, they actually look gray. Now you tell me, which is the superior screen technology? Obviously, you're gonna want those deeper blacks and the brighter brights and the punchier contrasts and colors. Now, you guys know I'm a huge fan and supporter of Paperlike. I don't actually like using an iPad without a Paperlike now because I've gotten so used to it. The look, the sound, the feel. And I promised you guys that I would show you what the Paperlike looks like on the new 12.9-inch with this mini LED display. So here you go. One of these 2021 12.9-inch Pros has a Paperlike installed and one doesn't. And yes, we're looking at the same HDR video once again. I mean, can you even tell a difference? Not really, can you? No. Well, the iPad on the left is the one that has the Paperlike installed. In fact, this iPad right here in front of me has a Paperlike installed. I bet you didn't even realize. I mean, if you use an Apple Pencil a lot, then the Paperlike is still absolutely worth it, even with this mini LED screen, maybe especially with it. Like if you want to reduce glare and fingerprints and protect this beautiful screen, yeah, it's really not going to affect your picture quality all that much. All right, Thunderbolt, let's talk about it. It's here now on the iPad Pro on both models, and that's great. It means faster file transfers. So if you have a gazillion gigs or terabytes even of photos or videos to dump or offload, this is gonna be great for people, especially out in the field. And this drive right here is the Samsung X5. It's not cheap. This is a 2 terabyte version, but it's nice and portable, small, very, very quick. It's basically like your Ferrari or Lamborghini of external storage for the iPad. Now let me explain something. I upgraded this iPad Pro to 2 terabytes. A lot of the review units that got sent out were 1 terabyte. As a YouTuber, when I'm creating videos, which I edit on the Mac, those videos often are between 1 and 2 terabytes in terms of their library size. So all the different assets and B-roll and screenshots, and just everything that goes into making a video is between 1 and 2 terabytes for one video. So if I'm a creative professional, I need to really seriously think about some external storage. And even 2 terabytes like I've got here, which is what this maxes out at, that's not gonna get me all that far. So I went on Apple's website and I found the G Technology G-RAID 12 terabyte Thunderbolt 3 external storage solution. On the website, it said it was compatible with the 4th gen iPad Pro. This, of course, is the 5th gen. So I contacted Apple support on chat, and then they called me, and 2 different reps told me that this G-RAID 12 terabyte setup would work with the 5th gen iPad Pro. So I ordered it, and I plugged it in, and guess what happened? It fired up, it whizzed to life, and it didn't show up in the Files app, which was extremely disappointing. And so I assume that this is something that's gonna get worked out as the Thunderbolt ecosystem builds out for the iPad Pro, depending on the popularity of it. But this is just kind of a word of caution. Just because something says it's Thunderbolt 3 does not necessarily mean it's gonna work with your iPad Pro. Of course, I gotta tell you guys about Center Stage. Center Stage is the feature that takes advantage of the new ultra-wide camera on the front of your iPad Pro, which, by the way, is still in the wrong place. Drives me nuts that it's off to the left when I have it mounted on my Magic Keyboard and not up top, because then you're always giving people the side eye. Just kind of weird, but it's such an ultra wide angle that by the time it crops in, it can follow your face around, or it can zoom in or out to expand to fit other people that are in the picture or not if you're just one single person talking, and still look really good in the process. Is it worth upgrading for just for that? I mean, if you lived on Zoom for school or for work, I don't know, maybe. It feels like just a nice to have thing rather than a must have thing. But wow, it brings a smile to your face, right? And you have fun playing around with it a little bit, seeing if it can track you, and it can. It works really, really well. All right, I'm on the tech specs page for the new iPad Pros. I'm gonna zoom in here because you can see we can upgrade to 16 gigs of RAM. Now, that's not an upgrade that you can really choose when you go to check out. It's just if you end up getting one of the top end models, it just so happens to come with 16 gigs of RAM. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, it just came out that app developers are limited to using 5 gigs of RAM per app. Yes, this is before WWDC, but the question is begged, why limit those apps? Yes, it lets you run more apps in the background seamlessly with less of a slowdown. Things launch really quickly. And I'm not just saying that, they really do. But to put this in practical terms, maybe a designer out there using their favorite app doesn't have the ability to add in extra layers like they could if the RAM was unlocked. Practically speaking, whether we're talking about gaming or multitasking or editing a photo, editing 12 streams of video in LumaFusion, I haven't seen that cap, that 5 gig limit, really affect anything or seem to slow anything down. But it does get you thinking, why did Apple include that? And I think with WWDC right around the corner, we're about to find out. So what's the conclusion here? This is my pre-WWDC review, and at the moment, I have to kind of agree with what other people have said. Yes, this is just a better or the best iPad experience that we've all come to know, and in most cases, I think love. But then again, there are some things that even the greatest iPad fans hate. And one of those things is just the Files app. When you copy and paste something, you don't know how long it's gonna take for that file to be done, to finish. There's no external monitor support still. That's really a pain. There's so much that the iPad can do that the Mac can't do and that people don't really talk about, and they just want the iPad to be the Mac, but I don't really feel like that. I honestly don't need Mac OS on my iPad. I don't even want it. I like the iPad being its own thing, and I like the Mac being its own thing, but I do desperately want external monitor support, so I'm hopeful that WWDC brings that. And if it doesn't, I'm gonna be majorly disappointed. Other people have complained that, look, there's no multi-user support outside of the enterprise world. And if you're a family using this device, you wanna be able to switch different profiles and load things up with your preferences. Multitasking on iPadOS as it is right now is a subject that can spark a fiery debate, because some people like how multitasking works on their iPad. And I suppose if you grew up with an iPad and not a Mac, you'd be like, this is the way it is. And you work with it and it's great for you. And then you have the people that came from the Mac and are used to having windows all over the place and being able to do whatever they want. And they're disappointed with multitasking on the iPad. And I fall somewhere in the middle, because I can get a lot done on the iPad. And yeah, it just goes to show you that there are some things that you can't do with an iPad. Just like the iPad can do things that the Mac can't do either. And all that does is make the choice for people really difficult if they're considering, should I get a Mac or should I get an iPad? Because it's really gonna come down to apps and the software experience. It's not really an issue of hardware at this point. And you're gonna have some people who would like to have the iPad Pro, but really can't because that one app or experience that they need is just not possible. Otherwise, in terms of pure hardware, is the screen really that good? Yes, it is. It is that much better. It doesn't come through in the video. And so if you're a photo editor, if you work on videos and details matter, HDR, that workflow matters, it's worth the upgrade. Is the processor a reason to upgrade? Well, before WWDC, all I can really say is you're just future-proofing yourself that much more. You're gonna be able to get updates, a little longer into the future than your old iPad. And because the last iPad Pro, it was already fast enough to basically do everything you ever needed. So maybe Pro apps are on the way. I say that with a smile because I hope they are. I just kind of have a feeling in the back of my head, maybe they're actually coming. That 16 gigs of RAM, it hints at something. But yeah, fortunately and unfortunately, this is more or less the same iPad experience you've come to know in the past, just with better hardware. If you like the vibe of this video, make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss all my coverage of the iPad OS updates, the Mac, iPhone, AirPods, Apple Watch, Apple TV updates as well. I'm gonna be all over all of that. And don't forget to check out the podcast. Again, I'll link up that last episode, which was recorded using an iPad Pro 2021 setup. That's it for this video. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Later.